So Wei-Tai Kwok is a volunteer public speaker who's delivered more than 100 multimedia presentations for the Climate Reality Project, is a 501c3 founder of a 501c3 founded by Vice President Al Gore, which is dedicated to engaging the public to take urgent action on climate. In his day job, he works in the solar and renewable energy industry, most recently as COO of Amber Kinetics, an early-stage flywheel energy storage company. Wei-Tai Kwok, woo! Welcome!
Hello, hi everybody, and thanks for having me today. I'm here, I'm Wei-Tai Kwok, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm coming at you today from the San Francisco Bay Area, city of Lafayette, which is Miwok Indian Territory. And today I'm going to actually give you a walking tour of my home, which I converted from a gas home to an all-electric home, and I want to share with you some of my experiences around that. But before I do that, I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about myself, since today's theme and speakers are on BIPOC and LGBTQT. Thank you, Sean, for showcasing and hearing the voices. So I figured I would at least share maybe two pictures, which I hope will give a little bit of background for myself. And this first picture is my family, my parents. I'm a Chinese American, and my parents fled from communist China in the 1940s. My dad there came over as a foreign student in Philadelphia. And my mother, incredibly, I only learned it this year that she came over on a refugee visa from China. And so I grew up in Virginia with my sister and brothers. So that's me right there. As immigrants, we love America. We're incredibly grateful for the opportunities that this country has given to us. And we're just incredibly patriotic and loving of America. Now, the other image I want to share with you is this one, which shows the world's largest carbon polluters. And the two biggest carbon polluters, the bigger the bubble, the bigger the carbon pollution. And the two biggest in the world are China and the United States, accounting for over 40% of the world's greenhouse gases. And now, as a Chinese American, as I told you, I sometimes look at this chart and I feel doubly guilty. But I then sometimes say, oh, well, I try to be a positive thinker. And what's a positive twist to that? And I say, well, maybe if I'm Chinese American, I can actually have an impact in both these countries where there's a problem. And so taking a more positive view on that, I actually think that Chinese and Americans, and maybe especially Chinese Americans, are we the key to life on planet Earth? And isn't this an incredible opportunity rather than something to feel incredibly guilty about? So put in the chat if you agree that Americans and Chinese Americans, we should do something, and that we're actually a major key to the solution. Show us what you think in the chat. All right, so anyways, I hope that's sort of get me thinking that I want to do everything I can to be part of the solution to the climate crisis, whether it be in my home or in my work and so forth. And a few years ago, I started hearing about building decarbonization, and I started reading some reports like this Synapse Energy report or this Rocky Mountain Institute report. And, it all boiled down actually to this one sentence, that for most new home construction, electrification of space and water heating and HVAC reduces the homeowner's cost over the lifetime of the appliances when compared to gas. So positive ROI, basically, if we'd gone electric for new home construction. So that really intrigued me because I thought it was expensive to do electric, and I thought it'd be really impossible to convert my home. So I actually went to this seminar in Berkeley in February of 2019, and I heard an amazing speaker there who might look familiar here. I learned a lot about the nuts and bolts of how to do a zero carbon home. So I came away from that workshop and said, let me see how I would actually go about this. So here's an overview of my home, where I live. I live in the suburbs in Lafayette. That's my house over there. It was built in 2004. So it was only a 15 or 16-year-old home at the time. And when I thought, like, gee, I wonder what I burn in fossil fuels in my house, and it essentially was 4 places, right? My gas furnace, my hot water heater, gas cooktop, and gas fireplace. So I said, okay, if I could get rid of those things, I'd be good, right? So I actually my wife and I, we said, well, how much is this all going to cost us? And really, what are the benefits? And we decided to go out and look for contractors to get bids. And mentally, I just thought the process was going to be, okay, let's start on this process, get some cost quotes, and then we'll begin the retrofit. And I eventually, called a number. It wasn't that easy to find contractors to do this, or at least holistic ones to do this. But I did find one who actually I liked, but they actually proposed to do something called an energy audit first. And originally I thought, oh, they're just trying to cross-sell me something extra and have a little bit more revenue here. But, when they explained it to me, they said, no, we need to do this so that we can properly size your equipment. And so I said, okay, well, go ahead and do it. So $550 later, accredited to any work that they were to perform, they started this energy audit. This is just a picture of my library where they use that FLIR camera there to see about heat loss. And you can see the darker colors in there showing that in the corner, obviously not visible to the naked eye, that's cold air that was coming in the wintertime, and I was losing some of my heat from my building envelope. So this contractor suggested doing some gap sealing to save energy and improve the air quality by identifying air gaps and foam sealing them. And their report, this is a page of their report at the end that just showed that they calculated my existing heating and cooling loads to be on the left-hand column, but that if I performed some energy efficiency measures before I did my electrification, I could actually reduce my loads 44% to the bars on the right. And of course, as somebody who studies this field, at least superficially, I know that spending dollars on energy efficiency are good dollars spent, right? And that they can result in smaller sized equipment. And the way as a layperson, I sort of think about it or explain is like, if I had a heavy load and then I need a big truck that costs a lot of money to move my load and it doesn't get very good gas mileage. But if I could reduce my load, then I don't have to get that big truck. I can get a smaller truck that costs less and that gets better fuel efficiency. So I think this is the HVAC equivalent of getting a smaller equipment that runs more efficiently and saves me money over time. So I could sort of understand that. So I gave them the green light to go ahead and perform the gap sealing, as well as what they recommended to replace my fiberglass roof insulation in my attic. So this was my original fiberglass. They vacuum cleaned it all out so that they could do the gap sealing. They did the sealing there, and then they sprayed cellulosic insulation. This is the final attic after it's been insulated with cellulosic insulation, which is a shredded newspaper product. You can see it's about 16 to 18 inches. So that's a little video I took after the work was done. And so what happened in terms of improving the situation? You remember the amount of leakage there was before, and then the following winter when I did the same time, oh, that was pretty good. So that really did improve the building envelope in terms of its leakage. So I was very pleased to see that. Well, all in all, it took me only, amazingly, 45 days to get rid of everything you saw here and to go all electric and disconnect from the gas grid. I actually had the contractor do the more difficult ones, and I did my cooktop and my fireplace myself. It's like a do-it-yourself type of project. So I'm actually going to stop sharing right now, and I'm going to take you on a quick walking tour of a couple of these major features of my house, just so you can see it. I'm sitting here in my kitchen right now, and we're going to go make our first stop over at the Induction electric cooktop. This is a Frigidaire 36-inch drop-in model. It's recommended by Consumer Reports. We liked it actually because it had knobs on it, and a lot of them are just touch screen, and we're sort of old school and say, actually, we like the knobs. So one thing that we learned is that we have to have a certain type of pan that you can stick a magnet onto, right? So we got this little magnet, and we tested all our pans. Like 90% of our pans failed, so maybe it was a good excuse to get rid of those 20-year-old pans anyways. But that magnetic tank, another cool thing was that when I turned this on high here, unbelievably, I could just put my hand on the cooktop and I'm not burning myself, because obviously, as we learned from Andre earlier today, there's that electromagnetic technology that will only react with the ferrous molecules in the pan, cause friction, and create heat in the pan. So let me pour a little bit of water here. And anyways, for those of you who want to let's go take a look at what's happening in this pan as it heats up. We've actually enjoyed stir frying, wok cooking, Asian cuisine, and so forth. And it's actually been no problem. You can see how quickly that the water is boiling here. And Andre also mentioned how responsive, if I turn the temperature down, it's responds instantly or it goes up instantly. So those were some really cool features and what we feel is a very high performance cooktop. But what really got my wife to agree to do that is not because of all the reports we read. It's really because she had a Chinese friend who's sort of a foodie, and she had an induction cooktop. And we asked her, we said, hey, what do you think of that? She said, oh, it's perfect. You're not going to have any trouble cooking. So really that word of mouth suggestions is a key, I think, to getting over the barrier of gas cooktops, which everybody loves cooking on gas. All right, the next stop on our tour is right over my shoulder here. It's a mini split. It's the HVAC in my home, which I've got this remote control on. I'm just gonna point it there and click it to turn on the air conditioning while I'm talking. You can see the vents opening and starting to put gentle cool air in this summer day. I've got 8 of these mini splits connected to 2 heat pumps outside my house. It's a Fujitsu unit. And we actually had a centralized system before with ducts in the attic and ducts in the crawl space. And the contractor we used recommended that we demise all of those and actually remove them all, seal them up to make our building envelope tighter, and then put these in the rooms. I was originally hoping that we could just keep all that in because my house is only 16 years old. But when I learned about, well, it's going to be more energy efficient to do it this way, I agreed to demise all the old vents and so forth and improve the air quality as well. One thing I've liked about this 8 units is that we really we're empty nesters right now. Our kids are grown up and out, so we're not in the whole house all the time. We only heat up 1/8 of the house, or we only cool 1/8 of the house at a time. In the winter, when we go to bed, we just turn the bedroom on 15 minutes before we go in to warm it up, and then the rest of the house we're not heating at night. So I think we actually are much more comfortable. So the quality of our life is better in terms of comfort. We sort of felt guilty like heating or cooling the entire house unless it was really unbearable. And now we sort of know the 200 to 300% efficiency and the fact that we're only cooling or heating that one room. It really eases our conscience, and we use it a lot more than we used to. The last stop we're going to go to is over here. This is my all-electric fireplace. I used to have a gas fireplace before, and Sean in his presentations before showed us pictures of all these beautiful electric fireplaces, which actually are pretty hard to find in the Bay Area. I went to a lot of showrooms, and all of them are trying to sell you gas. They're like, why do you want to get electric? They're ugly, they're this, they're that. So there's a lot of resistance in the channel to try to not get you to buy it. But the good news is frankly that there's actually a lot of cool and beautiful fireplaces out there. At the end of the day, I realized in Northern California that I only used my gas fireplace like 3 or 5 days a year to generate heat. And so there was really no need for me to generate heat from this fireplace. It was more an aesthetic or visual purpose. It's sort of a centerpiece. So I ended up going for just a LED log set here rather than building a whole new fireplace. This one actually has, so it has LED logs that we plugged into 120. Can you see the flames in back? That's actually a projected image. It's a projector throwing an image like a little movie against the back wall of flame. So it's not, that's sort of cool. And this one does actually have 1,500 watt hair dryer type of blower, so that I could turn that on, and it actually starts to, like a hair dryer. I can feel warm air right now, and it's blowing a little bit of warm air out. But there's really no sense for me to be using radiant 1,500 watt, maybe even if that's 100% efficient when I'm using heat pumps at 200 or 300% efficiency. So I never actually use this for heat. I would just use it for the visuals. Anyways, that's, let me just, I don't want to go outside my house here, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen on just a few more slides to share with you what it looks like outside. And that is, those are my, on the left, the heat pumps for the Fujitsu, the 8 mini splits that I told you about. You can see I have a Sanden hot water heater, and that one's over on the right-hand side. That's the outdoor unit for that. These are some of what the mini splits look like in our bedrooms and so forth. Originally, my wife was a little bit reluctant to put these on the walls. They thought, oh, those are going to look ugly. But anyways, they didn't end up looking that ugly. She doesn't mind it nowadays. We did get a heat pump hot water heater. There are 2 different types, like a split units on the left. That's the one I ended up getting, where my tank is indoors, but the heat pump is outdoors. We could have also got the single units, which you guys were just talking about, which, how much heat does it rob in the winter time from your indoors? Good to, it wasn't very many degrees. I actually picked the left one mainly because it used CO2 as its refrigerant rather than R410A, which is a very high greenhouse gas emitter. But it was much more expensive. So one big learning I had from this whole process was I didn't know how dangerous gas cooktops are to indoor air pollution. I thought it was clean. We don't see anything. But when I started to read that, if the EPA regulated indoor air quality, which it doesn't, that most homes in California would not pass with that. So I wanted to share a little video I just got yesterday from the Sierra Club that shows what a gas cooktop looks like in the middle, but if with a special camera looking at the pollutants coming out on the right, that's actually the pollutants that you see invisibly, or you actually can't see them coming out on the right. And what are those pollutants? Well, everybody here on this call knows it: nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, formaldehyde, and other PM 2.5. And so I think if I had seen that, oh my gosh, every time I use my gas cooktop, even with a vent, you're putting a lot of bad things in your house. And so that's another reason my wife and I were actually very pleased now to have our induction cooktop.
That video makes the hair stand up on my neck, like literally. Like, Jesus.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, the Sierra Club just came out with that, and they're going to start to distribute that more and more in the days and weeks ahead. So I grabbed it to just share with the group today, but it will be public. All right, so a lot of people say, how much? Yes.
Interject. So Hannah, so you're on deck at 2:15 as opposed to 2 o'clock, and Wei-Tai is going to speak till about 2:15, and then we're on track with Yanda. You're going to start at 2:30, just like you're scheduled. We're just doing a little shifting. Continue on. Thank you.
Okay, I probably won't go all 15, maybe just 7 more minutes or so. But anyways, unless it will take questions. So a lot of people ask, what's the budget for all of this? And so here's the total line item. It was about $56,000. That was higher than I had hoped. But anyways, sort of when you get into these projects, you feel okay. That's what it's going to cost. But half of that budget was the HVAC, item number 1, and the energy efficiency measures $11,000. That the Sanden hot water heaters about $7,600 rather than say $45,000 or $5,000 if I had gone single unit. I did get an HRV with this. I didn't really have time to put it in the presentation how our HRV looks, but that's a mechanical ventilation system. And then the induction cooktop, I did it myself. So it was a $1,600 unit. I paid about $600 to an electrician to string up to 240 instead of my 120. But then, so that was not that big a cost. And then the electric fireplace logs, $475, that I think was the bargain. Maybe not as beautiful as the ones Sean has shown, but anyways, I didn't want to blow the budget.
Lovely. There's a question from Deborah. She wanted to know what the square footage was of your house, noting that you had 8,
Eight mini splits. Yeah, it's a 4,000 square foot split level. So it's 2 stories with 2,000 per story.
Got it. So it's a larger house, for comparison, in Ohio, which is also a very less expensive construction market than the Bay Area. So like a house being a larger house, and also the market being at least 50% more expensive than lower cost, least cost markets. the range that we've seen is between $10,000 to $50,000, and they're mostly in the $20,000 to $30,000 range for whole house electrification, but they're also done with ducted systems and not with the nice controllability and efficiency that you have there. So, cheaper systems basically doing the job in like old Ohio houses. But
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, but because the number one lesson that I learned from having done this myself, and I built this house 17 years ago, and saw every screw go in too, and made all the decisions. I even asked my home builder back then about heat pumps, even though I didn't even know what they were, but they were ground source heat. He said, "Oh, nobody, nobody does that. It's such a hassle," and he was referring really to ground source. But I didn't. He said, "We're going to just do the standard thing." And so what did I know at the time? But, the big learning I had was that, why did I spend all this money to rip out all the old stuff and to put this new stuff in? I should have just started with this stuff from the get-go, like the Synapse report and the Rocky Mountain report had said. I would have had a better ROI. I would have been more comfortable the whole time. We should really build homes to be all electric from the start, and never to do what I did, the mistake I did, which was to put gas infrastructure in my house. This was sort of wasted money. Although I think I will get this back someday when I sell the home. I think it will be a more valuable home, that it's a zero emission home, and I could recover some of this. But let's talk about rebates, because unfortunately I looked under every stone possible in the Bay Area and there was absolutely nothing available to me. Even the Bay Ren rebates at the time in 2019 were only available for homes built before 2002, and mine was in 2004. And so even though I did all these fine things, they said, nope, you don't get that money. So the only $500 federal tax credit is what I could get. Now, thankfully, in just 2 years, this has changed dramatically, and there's a lot more. I could get heat pump water. I could get a lot more right now. So it's a better and better time. The policy regimes, thank you to all the California regulators for pushing. It's a good time to do it. And as I mentioned to you, when I completed the project, I called PG&E up. PG&E said, I want to disconnect from the grid, and they rolled a truck for free, and they'll come and take away my meter at no cost. The guy was done in like 20 minutes. So I said, wait, let me get a picture of this first. So I took the picture, and off it went, and I'm off the gas grid, which was an amazing feeling. So I'm really, must say, I never imagined that within 45 days I could get to a zero emission home. It's powered just by solar, the 15 panels on my rooftop, plus opting up to MCE's 100% deep green product. And so I can really say now that, yes, my home is a zero emission home. It was, the barrier to doing that was actually all in my mind, in that I thought it was expensive, I thought it was hard, and I was wrong. It wasn't, it was more expensive than I thought, but it wasn't hard, and it didn't take a long time. And so I think we can all do that. And one more thing, people ask, what about the cost of an all-electric home? So when I finished my first year after being an all-electric home, I crunched 5 years worth of my electricity bills. And going back the previous 4 years, you can see what they were. And then after my retrofit, you could see that my most recent 12-month bill was $898 for a year. And so like those reports said, it's, the ROI is pretty good on this home. On an all-electric home. So this was a very positive learning for me, that my electricity bills didn't go higher. So just coming back to that point of Chinese and Americans and what we can do, I think our country and China needing to work together can and are the key to life on our planet. And I think we have a very special role, all of us as Americans on this call. Some of our political leaders berate China or antagonize and say China's our enemy. This is not very helpful to the anti-Asian violence happening against my community now. It's not helpful for cooperation on climate change, which is urgent in the next 10 years. We've got to stop that dialogue and get onto a much more productive political, social dialogue between our countries so we can work together to save our planet. So thank you, Sean, and thank you, Redwood Energy, and everybody else that's here, so committed. I'm learning so much from everybody, so thanks again.
Brilliant, beautiful, well done. People have, and so many people said things along the lines of, love this centering of Chinese Americans. Thank you, Wei-Tai. that was really helpful. When you were sharing the story of the refugee status of your parents, or your mom, I was thinking about my grandma, who's not dead, 100 years old, who fled really severe domestic violence in Scotland as a 5-year-old. Her mom took her and her brother, and they were going to get murdered basically, and so they fled to Canada with her sister. And so in just the current narrative of refugees coming from other parts of the world, there's a significant amount of continuing domestic violence all over the world and the United States that we should all acknowledge, like people fleeing the threat of death or torture at home is something that we need to elevate as super important and part of our family. Most of us probably have someone who's been a real victim, not too many generations past, if not even currently. So thank you.
All right. Well, I could either take some of the questions verbally, or I could just type them in the chat too. Thank you for all the great questions in the chat. I wasn't multitasking to look at both. So,
well, one of them here, your charging strategy. Like, how fast do you charge your car?
Okay, so some people ask me if I have a battery in I showed you my solar panels, and a lot of people say, oh, what about a power outage? You have a Tesla battery. And actually, no, I don't have a battery yet. It's something I might consider, but I reject it for 2 reasons. Number one, if the power goes out, thank you, I'll eat peanut butter sandwiches and an apple. I don't need to have like every amenity in my house to work. I mean, we come from a third world country. We're used to power outages, and we shouldn't really feel like that's a necessity. On the other hand, I also have a Nissan Leaf electric car, and it's that car and others in the future will hopefully be my power source that I can plug into my car during an outage and run my house off my car. So I don't want to pay $10,000 or $20,000 to hang a lithium-ion battery on my garage wall when I already have, a bigger lithium battery in my car. And so I am sort of waiting for some of those products to come out that will be able to plug my electric vehicle to service my home, and just prove the point that that may be a better way to go, or eating peanut butter sandwiches and apples rather than thinking, I have to take a shower tomorrow, or I need my air conditioning tomorrow. So thank you for that question.
And Alice had previously asked about your panel size.
Well, it was a new home in 2004, so it was already a 200 amp panel. So I was fortunate.
There we go. And let's see here. Oh, I think that he did share his cost, Justine. I think she previously asked a little ahead of it. You shared that, I think, Kyoko Habino, we wanted to know the brand of the Induction cooktop and fireplace.
Sure, it's a Frigidaire 36-inch, recommended by Consumer Report. I can type that in the chat a bit later.
And the fireplace?
The fireplace, Napoleon. I'll put the link in that. The Napoleon brand, they have quite a wide range of, and this is like the lowest cost solution.
All right.
But the fireplaces, this is like, you can see the dimensions like 3 by 4, right? But many of the new ones are really elongated, right? And so they don't fit in this slot, right? And so I didn't want to have to get into a big project to demise my whole fireplace to get that shape in. So that sort of was a practical thing. And again, why building electric from the start when you're building your house would be the right place to do it, because after you have this shape, then it's going to be hard.
Yeah, the form factors, there's people who are, frustrated. They're 36-inch, tuck-in combined oven range, because those are a more expensive model in induction. I, by the way, put it out there that people should consider radiant electric coils if you're struggling with budget, because, I have my wife's cousin is a wealthy Microsoft person up in Seattle and has a radiant top, 4 or 5 burner, nice, stove. But it's not induction. And then when I asked him about it, he was just dumbfounded why I was even asking such a silly question. It's like, it's a great range. It's like, I love it. What are you talking? It's like, oh, it's okay. We don't have to have induction also if that's a price point.
Right.
There's some really good stoves that fit the space that aren't necessarily also induction, or getting a countertop induction to supplement.
Yeah.
Tor wanted to ask, how do you control the heat pump systems with 8 indoor units? Is it individually or a single thermostat that controls them or some other strategy?
That's a great point. Now, I happen to show you my remote control. So I have 8 units and I have 8 remote controls. And so that means my daughter controls the one in her room, my son controls his room, and there's just, everybody does their own things, which on the one sense provides great freedom and independence, but on the other hand, it means you have to go around the whole house to keep adjusting all this. So I think there's something called Sensibo, or there's some new products out there that actually are Wi-Fi enabled, that you could actually put some Wi-Fi into each one of these and then control them off an iPad. And I did not splurge for that yet because I figured I'll just try this way first and maybe someday down the road. So if anybody's tried, is it Sensibo, or have tried those things and they want to put it in the chat and share their experiences, I'd appreciate it. But basically you have both choices. It's just going to cost a little bit more. You know, you buy the add-ons in order to control it by your iPad.
Wei-Tai, I don't know how closely tied you are to mainland China, but
I've studied there, I've worked there, so I speak Chinese.
So this is excellent, because a number of people are like, are you actively trying to provide some bridge, you know, between America and China? And because you're speaking to the importance of these two cultures, do you see a role in being a cultural liaison?
Yes, I have. I have for the last 20 years been involved with various US-based nonprofits on US-China relations. And then I also worked for Suntech Power, which was the world's biggest maker of solar panels. So I would, as a business matter, travel there very regularly. And today I still work on US-China. It's a terrible time to be, well, it's a great time to be working on improving it, but I'm just really disappointed by how poor, you know, the relations have become and eroded over the last decade. Now, Republicans or Democrats, it seems to demonize, let's just demonize China. I don't know why.
We have some issues. I think that we could talk for a while, and you more eloquently than I, that like just the experience of racism in our country. I have this area here, the local history, and I'm a local historian. I gave my little presentation on history earlier. I do lots of history, and I have a lot of history on the exclusion of Chinese people locally, you know, in the 1880s.
Yes, you've spoken about it before in some of these.
Yes, it really a horrifying history, and I don't think that it's very well resolved in our country or spoken about enough, the anti-Asian or Asia side of Eurasia, because it's one continent, that whole weird idea that there's 2 continents in that one landmass, that's its own racist bullshit. So one thing, I learned that middle-class Chinese folks have your type of heat pump. I've been told that by manufacturers, that it's sort of a middle-class Chinese thing to do, to have one in each room, and it's kind of luxury. It's like you've arrived when you get to control your house that way. Is that true?
Heat pumps are all over Asia, right? When I saw after that heat pumps was just this thing that I'd been seeing in Asia during my business trips for a decade, I said, oh, they're not buying those things because they're expensive. It's because they're cheaper to use and so forth. And you're sort of right. Maybe centralized air conditioning is considered to be that Western ideal that we should strive for, even though it's 1950s technology.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with fire, because it's so dangerous that people who do central ducted heating systems, air conditioning is not much, you know, even to the day, you know, all over the country, only half or less of people have air conditioning. But it makes sense if you're doing a lot of space heating to burn it in one safe place and fluid. And so I think that central systems are really a relic of the hazards of having gas in your home. Whereas the systems that have been adopted as people have electrified from the get-go, built a new unit, didn't put gas in, as is common all over the world, but not so much in California, but worldwide elsewhere. It's like, then you can have all the control of what electricity provides, deliver electricity to each of these places, and then just reheat the air that's in that room, you know, and it's super efficient and flexible and comfortable, the points that you're making, and it's because you're not using gas. You just couldn't safely do that in each room of your house.
You're a great historian. I always learn so much, and sometimes about biology too. So thank you so much, and I'll put my name in the chat and my contacts, and I'll respond to some of the other questions in the chat. But I look forward to being with the group for the rest of the conference. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.